I want to talk about crypto mass adoption. And the thing with a lot of people want to talk about, when's Bitcoin going to go mainstream? When's crypto going mainstream? When's mass adoption going to be here, et cetera, et cetera. And I came across this several times. And I just wanted to talk about it today because I just feel like there's a little bit of, well, I'm about to show you Sonny Decree. Go and check out his channel. I like Sonny. I check out his channels. I don't like his technical analysis stuff. He does it all the time. He's trying to predict where the price is going to go. He's really not good at it. It's not his best stuff, but it's what he talks about. I know why he talks about it. It's what people like to watch. Even if he's wrong, his viewers like to watch it. And I'm certain his YouTube metrics tell him that. That's why he's always talking about it. But just listen to what he said. This is yesterday's video. Listen to this.
The CME gap. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, 8,500, that would be approximately this level right here. And I told you already in the yesterday's video, I personally do not expect that we're ever going to see this level again based on
So he's saying that we'll never see $8,500 again. Never and again. I'll let him finish up and then I'll comment on this.
Probabilities based on my analysis, and as you guys can see in here, people were voting, and 52% with 488 votes say no, we're not going to see the $8,500 level. 36% with 336 votes yes, and 11% they have no idea.
Okay, 52%. I'm betting now is dead wrong. He said based off of probabilities. That's more of that technical analysis probability stuff, which doesn't actually work. But let me just prove something to you. I want to talk about what does it take for crypto mass adoption, and I just want to make the case just so you're aware of it. Now, long term, obviously, I'm extremely bullish. I've probably done as many videos about Bitcoin going to 1 million US dollars as anyone. I'll link it above so you can watch it because I talk about it often. I do believe in that, but that is long term. In fact, I commented down here in his video. Let's see. I said, hey, I'm short-term bearish, long-term bullish. I definitely think we'll see 8,500 again. In fact, I think we'll see sub 5,000 Bitcoin again. Truthfully, I think we'll see sub 1,000. I'll show you why here in a moment. However, I'm dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and stacking passive Bitcoin assets. Love Bitcoin assets. You can subscribe to my newsletter down below, the Crypto Passive Profit Strategy newsletter. Love earning passive cryptocurrency. Love it, love it, love it. If you like passive income, if you like crypto, subscribe to the Passive Crypto Profit Strategy newsletter down below. Okay, enough about that. So why do I think it's going to go down so low? Well, shout out to Altcoin Daily for bringing up who made me start researching this topic a little bit. He was talking about this video right here. So let's first quickly we'll come back to this video, but let's take a look. The U.S. is very worried. By the way, this article just came out on the 18th. If you've been following my channel for a while, I discussed this way last year. I did a video talking about different methods to mass adoption, and I discussed everything that's in this article already. The U.S. is very worried about Bitcoin, and it's finally doing something about it. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, decentralization, China's digital yuan, Facebook's Libra. The U.S. is understandably worried. The U.S. is understandably worried about the dominance of the almighty dollar. Last year, U.S. President Donald Trump slammed Bitcoin as based on thin air, while his Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin branded Bitcoin a national security threat. Now, the U.S. has admitted Bitcoin and cryptocurrency could undermine the dollar's status as the world reserve currency, and it wants to find out exactly how bad for the country, its economy, and security could be. Many cryptocurrency enthusiasts predict that either a global cryptocurrency or a national digital currency could undermine the U.S. dollar. I'm being one of them. The U.S. Office of Director of National Intelligence wrote in a job listing earlier this month, calling for 2 researchers to evaluate the impact of the U.S. dollar losing its status as a world reserve currency. If that happens, which it will happen, I do predict it, but we will absolutely, the U.S. will absolutely have a a historic depression unlike anything that we've ever seen. No question. The question is only how bad will it be and how long will it last. If either of these scenarios or others come to pass, the U.S. would lose both its status in the world and its global authorities. You need to understand why this would occur. A lot of people don't understand what it means to be the world reserve currency. It basically means that for a lot of business transactions between governments, they have to agree to use the dollar. Back in the day, they used to use gold, and they used a dollar because it was backed by gold. So it was a metric that was considered to be safe. It was a dollar that was basically not inflatable. It couldn't be manipulated by the country that owned it. So this is all well and good. Say, for example, if China wants to buy something from Denmark, they agree to, use dollars. If China has debt and it issues debt to Denmark or vice versa, they have to repay that debt typically in dollars, just to give you an example. However, America gets to print dollars. They're the only ones. We are in more debt than any country has ever been in the history of the world. You think about that for a moment. Why is that even possible? Because we get to repay our debts with the dollars that we get to print. I'm oversimplifying that, but that's the gist of it. So, 2 roles looking for a postdoc, PhD graduate in a U.S. university or government laboratory employee, research assistant are within the U.S. intelligence community's postdoctoral research fellowship program, yada, yada. Okay. Back in 2018, the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Technology conducted research that found that the creation of new Bitcoin, along with smaller cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Monero, use more energy than mineral mining to produce the same market value. By the way, this could very well be accurate, but this very well could just be fake news, meaning that the study could have been done, but it doesn't mean that the study is real. There's plenty of studies that are padded that we find out later are false. The pharmaceutical companies are notorious for doing studies where they publish studies in the New England Journal of Medicine, but they're not actual studies. You can do the research yourself. The Department of Energy's Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Technology did not respond to a request for comment. That's interesting. Maybe they're trying to be unbiased, or maybe they're highly biased. It could go both ways. There are many advantages for the U.S. national security to have the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. There are many advantages for U.S. national security to have the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. The job post, which is a deadline of February 28th, read pointing to the combat of financial crimes, the prevention of terrorism, the development of weapons of mass destruction, the ability of the U.S. to sanction other countries. Right here, the ability of the U.S. to sanction other countries. The U.S. cannot sanction other countries as effectively if the U.S. dollar is no longer the world reserve currency, causing financial instability in global markets. So, I want you to understand how everything points to the U.S. There's under no circumstances does the U.S. government or the banking, the central banks of the world who deal with U.S. dollars, do they want cryptocurrency? I mean, that has to be well understood. So when someone says something like, oh, we're going to have, we're never going to go below 8,500 again, I think you're underestimating how much control that they can inflict on the current value of Bitcoin. But we'll get to that in a moment. The U.S. maintains international dominance in no small part due to its financial power and authorities. In almost exclusively, you could argue in its military might, but we can't afford our military. We only have our military because we're able to sell our debt and repay that debt with U.S. dollars. That's the only way we can afford our military. Meanwhile, calls for the U.S. to begin development of a so-called digital dollar have been growing louder over recent months. I talked about this last year to compete with Bitcoin. I believe that if they come out with a digital dollar quickly, it actually will work for a while and it will stave off or stall mass adoption for a while. The main reason is because they'll be able to attach your identity to it, just like your bank account. They'll be able to provide a sense of security with it. So if you do something stupid, like lose your private keys, essentially, you could recover them by providing or at least in their version of a digital dollar, you could recover them by providing your identity and proving who you are, just like your bank account. At this point in time, most people trust centralization to protect their identity so far. Even though hack after hack has occurred, Americans specifically, from the federal government down to the large credit card companies to the financial institutions and health companies and health insurance companies have all been hacked, and their private citizens' information has been compromised. But for whatever reason, we as private citizens, by and large, still trust centralized authorities to protect our information, to protect our identity. Christopher Whoever, former chairman of Commodities Futures Trading Commission, recently set up the Digital Dollar Foundation to work on the design and potential framework of a digital dollar. It is coming. One of the reasons I don't like XRP is not the digital dollar, but it actually serves the banking system. And I think the banking system is the issue that Bitcoin, the traditional banking system, which is the issue that Bitcoin ultimately fights against. The Bitcoin price has fallen to return to its had failed to return to its all-time high set in the late 2017, despite its climbing around 50% since the beginning of the year, was given a substantial boost in the first half of the year by Facebook's plans of the Bitcoin-like rival. Many have long expected governments to eventually try to undermine Bitcoin's network. To halt its adoption through Bitcoin's decentralized network makes it remarkably resilient. This is true. We can win a major battle with governments in the arms race and gain a new territory of freedom for several years, Bitcoin's mysterious creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, wrote in 2008. Governments are good at cutting off the heads of centrally controlled networks like Napster, but peer-to-peer networks like, I'm not even saying that right, and Tor seem to be holding their own. Bitcoin now stands with these networks and resistant to government control. I agree with that wholeheartedly. However, at this very point in time, most people who hold Bitcoin are holding it on exchanges in a way that is centralized, and that is a potential problem. I want you to take a look at this video. Again, shout out to Altcoin Daily for showing me, I saw this on his channel. But this is, listen to this. So this is at the Unconfiscatable Conference live stream. Let's listen to what they say right here.
Everybody wants to chase the rabbit, and that's where the mass adoption comes, is, you know, that first network effect of speculation and everybody chasing the rabbit so that they're able to protect their retirement accounts. You know, because this is also the largest wealth transfer in the history of humanity. And so, like, are you going to be a beneficiary of the wealth transfer or not? And, you know, and so mass adoption just...
I agree with that, by the way. I do believe this is the largest transfer of wealth in humanity. I think that it's going to be a painful transfer. I mean, I don't think it's going to be cut and dry and simple. Meaning, I think you've got to be in and be willing to hold on when price goes down even further, goes up. I mean, I believe a lot of people think that Bitcoin's going to be less volatile. I actually think we're headed for probably more volatile times. I genuinely do believe that, and what they're about to talk about is why. Keep in mind, Steve Mnuchin, what we talked about there, keep in mind the article we just read.
Drives through all of those human emotions and that human action. And so that's kind of how I see it is, you know, there's this need to be able to protect yourself against the state that is confiscating everything. They're confiscating it through inflation. They're now adding a little box on your tax return. They're tracking everything on chain. They're paying Chain Analysis a bunch of money to do it. Mnuchin is going to be enforcing the travel rule. So
Listen to this. Steve Mnuchin is the Treasury Secretary. Listen to this. So, of course, the Treasury Secretary is not going to be favorable to Bitcoin just based off the article that I just read to you. Now, one of the things Steve Mnuchin wants to do is he wants to make mixing, using mixers, illegal. So it is a crime if you use a mixer to maintain your privacy. But he goes into it some here. Listen to this. Keep in mind that most Americans and most people who have Bitcoin don't hold it in a private wallet. They still hold it on some sort of an exchange. So let's keep watching.
Any exchanges that don't attach all of this personal identifying information to your transactions will be decapitated, because if Kraken sends Bitcoin to Binance on behalf of the customer, and the customer even makes the representation that it's going to a personal wallet, Kraken can still be fined, and Binance can be fined $5,000 per day per occurrence. And 70% of transactions are intra-exchange. So if you're not including all this information, you're done.
When he says decapitated, he's talking about basically put out of business. Catch that. They don't want you. So right now, if you use something like Cash App, for example, Cash App is a popular app that I was going to talk about on this channel. I did talk about it in my 3 ways to buy Bitcoin. I'll put that video above. You can watch it, 3 ways to buy Bitcoin. But Cash App, a lot of people First time I talked about buying Bitcoin on this channel in a video, a lot of people referenced Cash App. So I looked up Cash App. Cash App is notorious for if you transfer out to too many different places it doesn't like, even to exchanges, they'll block your account. And if you read their terms and conditions, they basically tell you if you transfer your funds out of your Cash App account anywhere we don't like, then we can ban your account. Think about that. That's crazy. Coinbase, same thing. Coinbase is the best place for Americans currently to buy Bitcoin. It's the easiest place. When I say best, I mean low fees, very easy to buy, easiest to buy for most Americans. But with that being said, I tell people when you buy with Coinbase, send it to something like your Exodus wallet. Because if Coinbase doesn't like where you're sending your Bitcoin, they can ban your account. They can close it down your account. That's crazy. If they just because they don't like who or what you do business with. And now what they're saying is the exchanges are going to be in a place where they have to do KYC AML. They have to keep your identity attached to your transactions, essentially, meaning it would be done through technology. So if the government, it would make it easier for the government to find out who you are, what you're doing, or the government could say, hey, you're not allowed to do, crypto transactions with this place or that place, and they can prevent you from doing it or constrain it, or you're not allowed to, have X amount of once they have your identity, they can go a long ways between stopping you or halting you. And a lot of people like to say things like, oh, they're not going to stop me. Oh, I'm going to, subvert the government, yada, yada, yada. Listen, the reality is there may be a few people out there willing to do that. The majority of people are never, ever going to do that. So when will mass adoption occur? Well, mass adoption is going to occur. Let's watch this a little bit longer. I'm going to tell you what I believe.
And, sure, we might want the exchanges to be in the fighting truth to power business ideologically, but as the CEO of Netflix said, we're not in that business. We're in the entertainment business. And so in order to maintain the liquidity pools, what do we have to do pragmatically? Because we're not going to get mass adoption if it's extremely difficult and there aren't liquidity pools for the coins. So, this is a big, complicated game that we're playing, and there's a lot that the regulators can do in wielding the violence against, the different institutions and organizations. But, mass adoption, when people start making a bunch of money, they start getting political influence, and they start passing laws like we've done in Wyoming, with property.
So this guy believes, Trace Mayer, and they've done certain things, and they've got Wyoming has some good friendly laws where Bitcoin's considered property, basically. So it's really good for hodling Bitcoin there. But anyway, the challenge with what he actually believes that as people get more money through Bitcoin, I think that he's underestimating. I think he doesn't realize how powerful the banking cartel is overall. The banking system, the financial system, the central banking systems of the world. I think he's underestimating that. He's acting like as we as citizens get more money, money matters, and somehow we can become like the big CEO, the big financial kahunas that basically can vote people in and out of office, help people get elected by putting our money and our finances behind that. So that's his argument in here. That's what he's trying to say. I don't think he's wrong, but I disagree that it's just going to take Bitcoin price going up or crypto price going up and people getting a lot of money. No matter how much money they get, you're talking about, I think at some point back here you talked about having a market cap of like $10 trillion or something, and that would be like, a good mass adoption number or whatever. But I'm thinking any individual, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett is no match. Bloomberg, guy trying to buy an election, he's no match for the entire banking system. And even if they wanted to say, hey, I think Bitcoin would be good, what president in the world or what presidential administration would say, we're going to give up power, the power that we have over the world through the US dollar as the reserve currency? We're going to just totally roll over and give that up. Who would do that as president? Very few human beings would ever do that. So, ultimately it's going to have to be the sentiment. But this is disconcerting to me when he tries to say this, because I'm like, wow, these people are supposed to be like the who's who of the Bitcoin world, and they don't quite fully get it. Not 100%. I mean, they get it more than most, clearly, but they don't quite fully get it, because it doesn't matter how many citizens pay taxes on cryptocurrency. It's only when the sentiment of cryptocurrency changes. It's only when the sentiment towards the public sentiment changes. And the government's going to spend every dollar they have in media and marketing, in CNN, Fox News talking about, oh yeah, cryptocurrency, it's used by the dark web. Oh yeah, that's what you launder money with, which is not true, but that's what they're going to say, right? And so people are going to assume that. It's mind-blowing. This guy over here, he even goes, I'm not going to, you can come watch the whole video. The video is good. The video is fascinating. The video is worth watching. But he says something over here like, oh, we'll be at mass adoption in 7 years. And he bases it off the price, the linear price of Bitcoin. And he's basically saying anyone who's been in investing knows that historic performance never predicts future growth. That's known. Well, he bases the mass adoption number in like 7 years on linear growth. Well, if you look at, Bitcoin's gone up X amount of percent or X amount of times over so many years, and if that trend just keeps it up, then we're going to be, in 7 years, we'll be at mass adoption. Yeah, you're right. And by that logic, in 10 years, we'll be at extraterrestrial adoption. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, honestly, it's a little bit disturbing it's just a little bit disturbing. So Sonny Decree doesn't think that Bitcoin's going to ever drop below 8,500. Let me tell you something. If they start going after these exchanges, they're going to put out of business several of the exchanges, because several of the exchanges aren't capable of the technology needed to maintain everyone's identity. And what they'll do is they'll probably just cut off U.S. customers. So there'll be very few exchanges allowing U.S. customers, if any. I mean, if the government really wants to fight back against Bitcoin, they will literally make it illegal. They'll make it, some sort of a security, and it'll be illegal to own it unless you're an accredited investor. And at that point, average Main Street, Joe Blow will never be able to own Bitcoin as an actual Bitcoin. They'll make it illegal. And if he does it, he'll have to do it in such a way that is very illiquid. He'll have to use local Bitcoins, direct peer-to-peer transfers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I do believe that Bitcoin will be the choice that will, I do believe eventually at some point after government gets done, because they're wrecking the US dollar. I mean, all you have to do is understand how the US dollar works. It's a debt-based currency, and that's why our debt continues to go up. The debt will never go down. At some point, the financial system breaks. At some point, there's a massive reckoning. At some point, the citizens are upset. At some point, mass consensus changes. People don't care that transactions take 30 minutes. They don't care if the transaction isn't as cheap as they want it to be. They don't care about the limitations as much on Bitcoin. All they care about is they get hold their wealth in something, and they get to transact with it, and they could care less. Whether at that point you're going to see basically an economic uprising. And I believe that is coming. I believe it's most likely going to happen in our lifetimes. And I believe, without question, absolutely, it will be the greatest transfer of wealth in the world. But before that can happen, two things has to occur. Mass awareness, and I agree with these guys. This panel says that mass awareness has already happened. I agree with that totally. I do think mass awareness has occurred. But the second step is mass adoption. And mass adoption first will occur when people start having wallets and using their wallets. And I'm going to talk about Richard Hart in another video. I think he's wrong in something he says as well. I tend to agree with a lot of what he says, but he's wrong about something that he says when he talks about mass adoption. But I want you to know something right now. One of the reasons that I created my newsletter, the Crypto Passive Profit Strategy newsletter, is because two of my 3 favorite passive income streams are totally free. Practically anybody. I just had someone tell me today, using one of those streams, that in the month of January, he earned $5 in cryptocurrency, totally for free. But guess what? Now he's got to withdraw that somewhere. Now he does have a Bitcoin wallet, but if he didn't, You imagine, introducing your cousin Joe or your brother Bob or your Aunt Susie to a passive way to be able to make, money essentially. But that money's crypto. And it's like, hey, look, you can already do this, something you're already doing. You're already doing it. Now imagine being able to help them do something that they're allowed to earn money. There's a value there with cryptocurrency. Then they're like, well, how do I withdraw it? Well, you got to set up a wallet. Here, set up an Exodus wallet. Now they got a wallet. They're totally getting onboarded in the ecosystem. That's one reason why I set up that Crypto Passive Profit Strategy newsletter, is because I know for a fact that when you can help people make money, when you can help them earn a passive income, except that passive income's in cryptocurrency, now they start taking ownership. Now they start getting interested. Now they start interacting with it. Now you're literally leading the way towards mass adoption. And truthfully, I talk about, hey, it's about earning passive crypto. It's about, getting rich with crypto. And I think that's actually going to happen anyway. You get started buying cryptocurrency now, mass adoption occurs, you can't help but get rich. I mean, the price is going to go up. But if I'm very honest, I love the mass adoption appeal for what we're doing with that Crypto Passive Profit Strategy newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter yet, go down in the description, subscribe to the newsletter. I want to hear, what are your thoughts on mass adoption? Do you agree with me on what I'm saying? Where do you disagree? Let's have a dialogue down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up, or if you disagree with me, hit that thumbs down. And by all means, make certain you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. Again, shout out to Altcoin Daily. Shout out to Sunny Decree. I disagree with you, Sunny Decree. When the government gets involved and they go after these exchanges, I believe we're going to see most people are going to start selling their Bitcoin. Price is going to tank, and we may see super cheap Bitcoin. But in case that doesn't happen, I'm dollar cost averaging today, because none of us have a crystal ball. We don't really know what's going to happen. But what do you think is going to happen? What say you? Let me know down in the description. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, remember this. I say this in every one of my newsletters. Crypto equals freedom. Crypto equals freedom. Have a great day.